Good morning. Welcome back to the Enneagram Mom Interviews. I'm Whitney Ellison with Ellison Enterprises. We are on our last week of the series, and we actually were able to add one additional episode when Brittany Salo, our guest today, reached out to me and was willing to talk about what it's like to be an Enneagram 5 mom. So I'm so excited that she's willing to join me today. But before we get started, I want to remind everyone that the Enneagram is a wonderful tool for developing self-awareness and empathy. Our mission with this show is to amplify mom voices by telling our stories, honoring our differences, and offering useful tips from our specific Enneagram strengths that will help all moms and all parents in general. Today's sponsor for this episode is Maggie Mason, trunk keeper for Matilda Jane Clothing, and their new line Good Heart, which is actually a women's line that's very different from the Matilda Jane stylings. And I'm wearing a shirt from their first line that dropped earlier this year. I love this shirt. It says Be the Good. Everything in that line sold out. So it's some good stuff at a reasonable price, very approachable and stylish for all women. So their second line is dropping tomorrow. If you follow Maggie Mason Trunk Keeper, you'll be one of the first to see the second line drop and get your chance to order before it sells out. So thank you to Maggie for sponsoring this episode, and thank you to Good Heart for your beautiful clothing. Now, on to our amazing guest today. Brittany Salo is out of New Hampshire. She is the mom of 2 little girls. And when I say little, I mean she's got a 7-week-old baby. So very fresh little baby and a 3-year-old daughter. Brittany is a 5-wing 6, and I'm so excited to have her today. So Brittany, I'm bringing you on now. Hi, good morning. How are you?
Hi, good morning, Whitney. Thank you so much for having me this morning.
You are welcome. First, I want to check and make sure that you can hear me okay and see me okay.
Yep, everything looks good.
Awesome. Well, those beams in your background are beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, we live in a really old house. It's 1760s, I think. So they're all original. Yeah.
Gorgeous, gorgeous. Well, thank you for being on here with me. And I would just love to learn more about you. If you could share a little bit about yourself and who you are, what you're up to these days.
Sure. So I'm a bookkeeper for the family business, and I have 2 little girls, like you mentioned. I'm actually on maternity leave right now. So my day-to-day activities look a little different, and it's great because I'm just able to adjust to splitting my time with 2 kids, which as an Enneagram 5 is something that I am very intentional about. So that's been really great. But when I am working, I wear a lot of hats in the family business, and it's something that me and my husband will take over the business someday. So it ends up being HR and bookkeeping and marketing and all kinds of different things when you work for a small business.
Yes, definitely, especially family owned. I think everybody wears a lot of hats and really has to come together quite a bit, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a team effort.
That's great. Well, wonderful. So do you feel like the activities now, I know you said you're on maternity leave, and I want to speak to that a little bit, but your activities from your day-to-day, do you feel like these are a good reflection of a type 5 motivation?
I think so. I mean, I can really only speak for what I know. I really don't know any other female 5s like you had talked about. They're a little bit harder to find, but I'm very intentional about making sure that I get my alone time every day. I feel like I'm a better mom when I wake up in the morning before the kids. And, my faith's really important to me. So starting some time in the Word and in prayer really helps me to center myself before the rambunctiousness of the day starts.
Well, that makes sense. And, I love that because as an 8, the stress number for an 8 is a 5. And oftentimes people associate stress number with a negative connotation when actually that's not true. It is true that when you go into your stress place, you can take on the shadow side of that stress number, but it's also true that you can utilize the strengths of that stress number to help you process that stress. And so when I say that, for you to mention alone time, that really speaks to me, because I know that the best way I recharge and rejuvenate is to withdraw and take some time for myself and really spend some time alone. And that is absolutely necessary for me.
Yeah.
So I love that you do that. Now, what I need to understand, because I just had a baby a year ago, is how you are able to get up early with a 7-week-old. Can you please share your secrets?
So I think this kind of goes back to having my first baby, and I really had a hard time adjusting, because I went from completely losing my independence, which was like a whole shock to me. And I'm sure a lot of moms can speak to that in different role was reading a lot of books. And so I think I have read, I don't know, probably every sleep book that there is out there. And so helping my baby learn how to sleep, like last night, she only woke up once in an 11-hour period. And so I think that part of it is huge for my mental health, because I get that break at night and then I'm able to get rested enough. But the other thing is me and my 3-year-old do quiet time every day.
Yeah.
And so she doesn't nap anymore, but we never actually dropped the nap time routine. And so having that nap time routine still built in allows me to have a break, and we get a break from each other, which is good, because 3-year-olds have a lot of big feelings. So, you know, she's learned, okay, she knows when she needs a minute, needs to regroup, and has a lot of like creative and independent time to play. And just having like those two aspects has really helped my mental health and helped this transition much more than my first child, for sure.
Well, I think like just so my little one is she has 4 teeth pushing through right now. So we literally like just got in the rhythm of sleeping at night at 12 months. And then it just dropped off the face of the earth. And we went for like an entire week, like averaging 4 hours of sleep a night between my husband and I. And so to your point though, like sleep is vital. Like that rejuvenation is vital. And something to me that I'm hearing from you that speaks to the Enneagram Type 5 motivation, which is to have and obtain knowledge, is your astute willingness to study that sleep training and master it. I too tried to study the sleep training, and I did not have the same success, but I also highly doubt I was as committed as you were to the process. And so I think that's really admirable. And the fact that you've got a 7-week-old that's sleeping for those longest stretches is amazing. Like, well done. I applaud you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that, because I do know part of it is like the work that I put in it, but part of it is too just knowing what babies are capable of and trusting them in that, you know? And yeah, I think you're right, and I think that it's important for people to just hear, like, it can be done, but also they're babies, and it's okay to leave room for grace for like learning your child and learning their sleep patterns, and just tuning that, because you're not going to have a perfect schedule every day, and that was something that was hard when I had my first child, because I was like, she's not doing everything by the book. Why isn't she? I'm doing everything right. So allowing grace for that, even if you do think that you followed the book to a T, I think is really important.
Well, and yes, and I love what you just said about that as well, because I think that our children are teachers for us, right? Maybe more so than any other teacher will encounter in our life. If you choose to open up your family to children, whether you're whether they're biological or adopted, or however that is, they are teachers, because now you are giving of yourself, and it's no longer the regimen that you have set out for yourself. And it's a lot. And I would venture to say that disruption in your life with child number 1, as is with all moms, but in the way that you process information and the expectation you might have had in preparation for this baby, and she didn't follow the vision that you had created, was probably very hard for you.
Yeah, it definitely was hard for me. And she actually, my first child was born 6 weeks early, so we spent time in the NICU too. And I think that added on to a lot of it. And for a while I struggled with, okay, how much of this is hard because she's a preemie, and how much of this is hard because it's hard for me to change, these things. And I feel like I don't know myself and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so for so many of those reasons, having this baby has been so healing for me because she was full term. She was actually overdue, which was amazing. And I think just knowing now, like, okay, this is what a full term baby looks like. And I have the Enneagram now, which I didn't have with my first baby. So I didn't really even know a lot of these things about myself. And so being able to differentiate has really helped process and heal a lot of those areas.
Well, that's wonderful. So since you brought it up, I would love to hear a little bit about your journey with the Enneagram.
Sure. So in typical 5 fashion, I discovered the Enneagram probably 2.5 ago. And it took me an entire year to come to terms with the fact that I am a 5. I went back and forth and I read the Sacred Enneagram. That was a book that really helped solidify my 5-ness. But once I kind of accepted that, I think there were a lot of stigmatisms about being a 5, and you see things on the internet where 5s are antisocial or 5s, don't like people. And I don't feel like that's true of me just because I'm reserved of my time. I get drained more quickly, but I still really do love people.
Did I lose you?
Oh, are we back?
Yes, I'm so sorry. My
That's
wireless
okay.
disconnected, so I went on data. We should be good now. I
Okay.
apologize.
That's
So,
okay.
so where I lost you was you were talking about the book that you had looked at to learn more about the Enneagram. Would you say that book again, please, for everyone
Sure.
that's interested?
Sure. Yep. It's called the Sacred Enneagram. And it's really in depth. It was even a little bit too deep for me where I kind of read it and then I had to go back through and like really dig into certain aspects. There was a lot of footnotes and so it was definitely a meatier book, but it really helped me understand, like the childhood wounds and where I go to in stress and growth in those areas a lot more. So after kind of coming to terms with that, it took me another year to really figure out my wing, which I just saw Colleen says 5 wing 6. I'm a 5 wing 6. So hi, welcome. So really leaning into that and coming to terms with my 6 wing really took me another year. And it's just the way I process and the way I dig in. I had to analyze all of the other numbers to make sure those didn't fit in my life.
Well, and I want to touch on something that you said earlier, just to revisit that since we got cut off, which is it was hard for you to come to terms with the fact that you were a 5 because of the stereotypes about 5s, that they're withdrawn and unfriendly and unapproachable.
Yeah.
And I want to reiterate that there are stereotypes for all the numbers that are very untrue about the souls behind them. And so I love that you mentioned that so that we can acknowledge that just because a motivation of someone is a certain way doesn't mean that their behavior is a reflection of that overarching description. And as a female, especially because there are fewer 5 females than male 5s, at least that have come out and talked about it that we know of right now. I think that it's important to acknowledge that, just as it is when males identify as a type 2, which tends to be a more feminine oriented number. So, when you were exploring the type 5, what drew you to it that really spoke to you and said, you know what, I think this is what I identify with leading with?
Yeah. So yeah, great insight, everything that you just said, because I do feel like I struggled with that a lot. And there was even a point where I was like, I don't want to be a 5. I'm just going to wake up and decide my number. I'm going to be a 7, not knowing yet.
Everyone says that.
Yeah, but what's funny is I go to 7 in stress.
Sure. Yeah.
So I'm like, I think I was just really stressed out about it. And I didn't know enough yet. But I'm sorry. And so you said your question was about...
I would just love you to share a little more about your experience with feeling that shakiness about identifying with the type 5.
Yeah. So I I think that it was just really hard having all the negatives and not enough of the positives out there in the world. And once I figured out that, you know, I really related to being the investigative side of a 5 and really digging into things and researching things, and really figuring out like their energy levels and the difference between 5s and 9s, especially with how we reserve our energy. Yeah. That helped solidify things for sure.
So were you kind of caught between a 5 and a 9 a little bit?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes I went back and forth. I have one of my sister-in-laws is a 9, and we're so similar in so many ways. So that's really helped because she's familiar with the Enneagram. So we kind of hash things out back and forth about, you know, the differences and like, okay, we both have low energy levels, but I do this and I do this, or we, you know, sometimes we avoid things, but this is why she does it and this is why I do it. So.
And you're both withdrawing stances, so that does make sense, right? And,
yeah, interesting.
And so, okay.
There she is, homemade helper. Hi, Annie.
Hi. So before we move to the next question, there's one more thing I want to touch on that you mentioned that I think is important to educate our viewers about and learning about 5s, and that is the famous 5 energy level. Could you share a little bit about that, please?
Yeah. Oh gosh, it's so hard because and that's part of when I found out I was a 5 was releasing me of any pressure I felt to like have energy, because I'm like, okay, it's okay that I don't. I felt broken for a really long time. You know, there's something wrong with me health-wise, or why do I need this much alone time? I'm married to a 7, so that's hard. And he's extroverted and I'm introverted, and, you know, we're polar opposites in so many ways. So I always felt like, okay, why can't I get myself to that energy level? And you know, even schedule wise, I can't handle as much as other moms can. But now it's like, okay, I can accept that part of who I am, and I can really work my schedule around that. And I know now, you know, how many play dates I can have in a week to fully show up. And I think that's important, is to just be able to fully show up. But also like having kids has totally pushed those energy levels and showed me that I can show up more than I think I can. So sometimes it's also just about getting out of that headspace and just a little bit pushing yourself physically and going, okay, I can do this. You know, I psyched myself out, and I do need to make sure that I get the alone time that like I really need, but also I can show up more than I think I can.
That's wonderful. And actually, Alexis, my friend Alexis Nickel just commented, I think I have some of the same tendencies. This is great. Alexis just joined us, and Alexis, you're absolutely right. For your knowledge, Brittany, Alexis is a 9, and we had just talked about the withdrawing similarities between the 9 and the 5 and the energy levels. So totally on point, Alexis. And so, okay, so let's talk a little bit about how you developed the 5 motivation in childhood. You have a very interesting childhood. You're number 5 of 6, is that right?
6 of 7, actually. Yeah.
6 of 7. Okay.
Yeah.
Which is even like, whoa. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. How do you think you developed this type 5 motivation for knowledge and this withdrawing stance?
Yeah. So, I mean, my family was definitely a huge factor in that. I remember being a kid, and I think a lot of the personalities in my family are stronger personalities too. And so I just really craved that alone time as a kid. I remember one instance, I probably should have okayed this with my mom before sharing, but I remember one instance being at dinner as a kid and my mom saying, you know, you can't get up from the table until you finish your meal. And I wasn't hungry, so I just wasn't eating. And I just remember sitting at the table, and finally she said, you're going to have to go to bed without supper. And I remember going, I'm not hungry, or I can just go to bed right now. And in my room, I knew that there were a lot of books, and I could avoid the chaos of dinner time and all of my, you know, siblings being running around. And I went, okay. And I went to bed.
Sounds dreamy, actually, Mom.
Yeah, it's so funny. So I think that that was definitely a big factor, was being in a big family. And another thing that I know really affected me was when I was, I think I was 8 or 9. Actually, I might have been a little older, but I got diagnosed with something called Klippel-Feil syndrome. And it's actually like a form of scoliosis that I have chronic pain from now still. But having that, I used to play, when I was a kid, I played soccer. I was in gymnastics. I did piano. And actually how we found out that I had this was because playing piano would hurt my back and my shoulders. So I think that having that physical like disability forced me to really become competent in other areas. And so since I felt so incompetent physically, I focused on feeling competent mentally, and it helped, or I had to learn how to cope with that chronic pain at a really young age. So that was a huge factor in it as well.
That's really powerful. And I want to sit with that for a minute and think about that in terms of, really reflecting on how childhood impacts the motivations, why we do the things that we do. There's a school of thought that I tend to believe that, and it's the narrative Enneagram school of thought, that we tend to be born very prone to our types, but there's, in my mind, that is true. So I was born pretty aggressive tendencies, but the things that happened to me created the motivation behind why I do what I do,
right?
As I was growing up as a child. So when we think about your surrounding circumstances, your large family, the overwhelm of that for you, the fact that you might have been born predisposed to have a more of a withdrawing stance, and then the idea of proving that competency in the area of intellect because you felt that you were coming up short in the competency of physicality because of the disability that you ended up finding out about. I think that's really impactful to think about, and think about how those details really impacted the way that we make choices in our day-to-day and why we do what we do. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's very helpful insight, and hopefully that was a inspirational reflection for those of you watching that are really trying to understand more what influenced you in a young world to create the motivations for why you do what you do. The other thing I wanted to ask you with regard to childhood, just because this is kind of a textbook idea about an Enneagram, or theory, a textbook theory about an Enneagram 5's childhood, that I was curious if this had anything to do with it as well, is Enneagram 5's, the withdrawing children, often received more attention than they really desired. And so that caused them to withdraw more. Did you ever have that experience?
I think if I did, it was probably because I was the youngest of the family until I was 6. And so that probably had a big impact on having all of my older siblings' attention, being the baby, for 6 years. And so I would say it would probably have come from them. I never felt like, my parents gave me a good amount of attention. I felt like they gave me what I needed when I was a kid. So I think if that aspect were to have affected me, it would have been from my siblings.
Sure. And I would also say, they have so many kids, there's only so much attention they can give each of you.
So true. So for me, that was probably perfect. I was like, I'm getting just what I need from mom and dad.
That's great. That's great. I love that. All right. So let's go back to motherhood for a little bit. And I know we touched on this earlier, and you had talked about, how discovering the Enneagram after you had your first and before you had your second was extremely helpful in the insights with your second and how to handle things. Can you talk about how the Enneagram has helped you in motherhood and share a little bit about that? A little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. Let me think. So I touched about how having quiet time and how I think kids are capable, but I really do think it's helped me accept me and be a more confident, or help me accept myself and help me to be a more confident mom. And also help me find strengths. I realized that I really enjoy teaching my kids new things and new activities. And so knowing that and knowing the things that I am good at helps in just falling into that comparison trap too. Okay, why am I not doing this the same way other moms are doing? And so just having that and able to build that confidence has been huge. And the Enneagram definitely helps with that tool.
That's great. So, and what I'm hearing from this too is you're able to give yourself more grace.
So true. Yeah, it's so true. And I think one thing about being a 5 is that we do know all of the other numbers. Well, I don't know if we all do, but I feel like
I bet you do.
I've studied all of them until I made sure that, I was really a 5. And so that's really helped me knowing that, I'm created unique, and because I do have access to that 4 wing too. And 4s really want to be, unique and really identify with that. So I think that's just been helpful knowing knowing what the other numbers have, knowing what I bring to the table, and just being really able to own that and give myself grace in the areas that, they're better at that, and that's great. They should be.
And something that you said that I want to reiterate for those watching is the importance of not just taking a test or assuming your type because someone has maybe told you that you're a certain type. We never want to type others because it's their own journey and it's their own motivation that we don't know about. Behaviors can reflect so many different types all at once. It's not about the behavior. It's about the motivation. And in order to discover the motivation behind why you do what you do, you have to think about it and reflect and look at those childhood circumstances and understand what it is that you're tapping into when you make the choices that you make. And what you said that I think is really profound, Brittany, is that you found a book and you read about each type and you took the time to process each type and think about it. And that's a very thing to do, but it's a very valuable thing that I encourage everyone to do. Even if you've taken a test and you feel like that test identifies your type, you haven't done the work until you've explored each type and confirmed that this is who you relate the most to. And the reason I say that is because if you mistype yourself or if you are mistyped, there is no value in this tool because you're leading yourself in the wrong direction. This is all about self-discovery and understanding who you are. So if you feel like perhaps there's an opportunity to explore other types to confirm that that type is indeed what speaks the most to you, please do so. Please get a book. The book you recommended is great. I've given a list of books before. I mean, The Road Back to You, The Complete Enneagram. There's so many. Or talk to somebody who understands the Enneagram about the different types with the understanding that they are not to type you. So anyway, all that to say, Brittany, I appreciate so much the fact that you read the book and you did the work and truly know that this is the motivation that you lead with. So well done for that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's been a couple of years. So
yeah. And that's the work, right?
Yeah, it is.
It really is. And it makes us better people.
Yeah, and I think that's why you keep saying the Enneagram journey, because it really is. It really is. And I still feel like those around me, I'm learning, as they discover their types, we're able to understand relationships around me better too.
Absolutely. So the last question that, we have for today is, if we go back to parenting, you have already offered some wonderful tips about what you do to kind of manage your day-to-day with parenting two young girls, one being finding time to rest and finding time for yourself. But I wonder if there's anything else you'd like to share and offer that would look like help to all of us parents out there.
Sure. So I would say when for me, I'm too much in my head, and maybe other withdrawing or, types that can relate to that are that way as well. To just try to get out of my head, it's really good to just try to find something physical to do. So exercise or bake or paint. And if you can do that with your kids, it's even better. And that really, really helps for me to stop my over processing, especially with my sixth wing. I can really overthink things if I let myself go down that rabbit trail. And so I would say that, like, as a mom, just to show up and try to be as present as you can, and physically moving is a way for me to do that, to disconnect from the thoughts that are just running through, and to really be present.
I love that. I mean, you're getting into your body, you're getting out of your head and into your body. And I think that's powerful. And so I think that's great advice, especially for those head types that, can get in that spiral, getting out of your body, or getting into your body and out of your head rather, and getting that movement, spending time with others, with your kids, exercise. So there for that. I mean, the endorphins, the way that gets my energy it orients it in a better direction, is great. And then baking, girl, If you bake, I just applaud you. I'll eat
I
whatever
wouldn't
you
call what I
bake.
do baking. I'm a box mix mom. In fact, I would love to find another five mom just to find out, like, is baking something that all five just don't really love or what? But I enjoy it with my kids more than anything. I'm like, we can dump a box mix and crack an egg and call it
Yeah,
good, you know?
that's right. And it is
Yeah.
good. Box
Yeah,
mixes
it
are
is.
good.
I'm a fan.
Yes. Well, that's wonderful. Well, Brittany, it has been really, really great to get to know you. And I'm just, I'm really appreciative, especially as an Enneagram 5, that you are willing to come forward and talk to me, and share a little bit about your journey, in the Enneagram and as a mom. And I definitely hope that you stay in touch and just thank you. Big
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. And thank you so much for having me, Whitney. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, good. Well, thank you. And have a great week. Happy Monday.
All right.
And enjoy spending time with your girls.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining this episode today. Brittany was wonderful, learning so much from our Enneagram 5s. That is so valuable. I wanted to also thank our sponsor. And hopefully this is still live and going. I can't tell. Anyway, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Maggie Mason, Trunk Keeper for Matilda Jane, and Good Heart. Again, this episode features lines from the Good Heart clothing, and this is from their first line. It is sold out. It says, "Be the Good." This is actually embroidered, really cute. Their second line's dropping tomorrow. It will sell out. Follow Maggie Mason, Trunk Keeper. Keep your eyes on her page tomorrow because those clothes will be dropping and they are cool and they are stylish and they will sell out. And Wednesday, we have an awesome guest. We have Dr. Ashley Solomon, who is the founder of Gallia Collaborative. She's an Enneagram 6, so we will have a great interview with her on Wednesday. And then Friday, we have our last episode, and it's a mystery guest. So we'll see you on Wednesday. Thank you again for joining, and thank you, Brittany, for being with me. Take care.